I have no trust in this government that the government's going to, come and like you say, save us or fix this. I mean, we're part of a system that is built upon, the fact that there's going to always be an underclass. Whether it's slaves and black people or immigrants or women or, the poor. There must be an underclass, and so, woven into, the fabric of this, this system that we live in is a hypocrisy. So, if we stop, having these sort of elusive, these ideas, these illusions of, one day we're all going to be, we're all going to live in a system or a society that's equal and just. The only way that that's going to happen is if we completely dismantle this system, and any, form of sort of, violent revolution is out of the question. We live in an era now where the Second Amendment is not going to, save you from, that's not going to help you overturn your government or change the system. We are in what we are in right now. I do still believe that we need to look for other tools. I don't believe that we can dismantle, an oppressive system using the tools that built it.
Freddie Gray, a young man arrested by Baltimore City Police last weekend, has died.
The Freddie Gray incident wasn't the cause of the uprising. It was just probably that last straw that broke the camel back. After decades of crying out,
what do we want? Justice! And when do we want it? Now!
History will one day look back and identify this year to define when American policing began to change.
I mean, something at that moment like snapped inside of me. It was just like, I can't just sit on the sideline. And that's what this is about.
Hey, this is Mike from Reelblack Radio and Reelblack TV, and we have a very special guest on the line. With us is Miss Sonja Sohn, who has a brand new movie called Baltimore Rising, which debuts on HBO this weekend. Welcome, ma'am. Which is where I first discovered you, and of course, most people are aware of The Wire, of course. So, how did this come into your lap as a movie that you wanted to take on as with your name above the title?
Well, it sort of organically comes out of the work that I do in Baltimore, through the organization that I started with some of the founding members of some of the principal cast members of The Wire, Rewire for Change. I came to town. I had come back to town, I guess a few weeks after the uprising, and just jumped in to do, whatever I could, and to learn what was going on in the city at the time, to kind of just listen and see where I could fit in and be useful. And kept hearing folks talk about reframing the narrative of Baltimore, that the city residents felt like, The Wire told one part of the story, that the media displayed them unfairly, and so they felt like it's time. I kept hearing, it's time for us to reframe our narrative, and that's in my lane. That's my wheelhouse, storytelling. And now my intention originally manifested was the Wire cast was coming back to Baltimore for a reunion that happened to take place over a weekend where there was a big arts festival. And what we ended up doing was conducting storytelling workshops to extrapolate monologues from the residents of the community where the uprising took place, to get their narrative and their thoughts and feelings about what happened, their perspective about what happened out. And we put on a big show. It was a staged reading where the Wire actors and the residents got together read these monologues. So initially that was the offering. It was a fundraiser as well for grassroots community nonprofits on a campaign that's still ongoing. But it was in the execution of that I started to see that maybe we might have the opportunity to tell these stories on a larger platform. And that's when I started sort of vetting this idea about bringing a project to some entity based on some of the work that I'd done. And in that sort of process of just processing the idea with George Pelicano's Mark Levin, Anthony Hemingway, Mark Taylor, those all the EPs, came to the conclusion that the best way forward was to do a cinema verite documentary following the people that I had started to get to know, and some of whom I'd already known, who were doing this work. And one thing I knew was that I knew how hard the people in this town had been working to change. I had been working on the ground for 5 years prior to the Freddie Gray incident. I had seen the frustration and been a part of that, and felt that frustration of trying to push a boulder up a hill. Every time you're doing the work, you see so many obstacles, and you see so many preventable obstacles. And so I'd known that frustration, and once I also heard the people of Baltimore during that time on the news really having a more sophisticated conversation than I felt I was hearing nationally around that time. Folks were talking about police brutality, but they were also talking about the roots of the frustration and the anger, and what the police brutality is tied to, or what's at the bottom of that. And so that was also inspiring to me, and that was a part of the. I always kept that in mind.
Without question. I mean, I'm a big fan of your work. I mean, and it's good to hear Mark Levin is involved. I mean, he did Slam, of course, and that Slam is a movie people need to check out, because that was talking about prison industrial complex. Was you and Saul Williams, of course, long before. Today it's like it's in everybody's vernacular. Those issues, but and then I also know. I mean, with your work with Rewired, I mean, you've been doing the work forever. It just seems like now with the cameras that are available, it's becoming more part of a national dialogue, an awareness, and there are a lot of systems that are being dismantled as a result of more communication and so on and so forth. And it's so great that this movie is going to be on HBO starting November 20th. So that's another full circle thing for this movie, Baltimore Rising. But so. I'm just curious, as somebody who's been doing the work for so long, and what, and I always tell people, it's like, they're not really coming to save us. There are certain things that we have to do for ourselves. But then when I see your film, it looks at from a variety of angles, in terms of connecting people to address the issue. So I mean, can you speak to that and why? Like Whose Streets, they focus primarily on the protesters and the people that were at the ground level of the rebellion, but you also include police officers, social workers, people that are brand new to the struggle. I mean, how did you lay out your characters that you were going to follow?
I have to say that it was, organically the people who came forward. I knew Chief Russell. I mean, I knew him when he was Major Russell, then Lieutenant Colonel Russell, and now he's Chief Russell. But I knew him because the organization, when we were housed in a bricks and mortar building, it was the organization was located in his district, and he was a community activist major. He was the commander of the Eastern District, and he was, as that commander, he was a community activist, and he preaches on the side. I mean, he has so many. So I got to know him then. I got to know him as kind of cop I'd never seen before, and the kind that I thought, he was an example of and a symbol for what I think law enforcement should be. So he had already impressed me, years earlier. And I met Davon Love and Adam Jackson when they were like in between. They were about Kwame's age, I think 21, 22, just like pretty much fresh out of college. And they had already impressed me at that point. They were already very measured in the way they operated. They were already very strategic, just the way they are now. And they were a part of another push to stop the building of a city jail, a city juvenile jail in Baltimore, and actually had accomplished something. So I'd already seen that they they appear to be young activists who know how to get the work done. I knew they were policy-driven and policy-oriented. I saw the video of Kwame, and I was very impressed by that, I think, as a lot of people were, before I even knew him. And then I met Michaela through the storytelling workshop process, LBS, actually, because part of the part of that process was we wanted to have younger voices in that show, and so we started to sort of do some outreach to get some younger voices, and LBS suggested Michaela. So that's how I got to know her. But once I started to, and Devin, of course, with the photography. So once these people emerged, right? The rest of the groups emerged. They were examples of power to me. These are people who are not waiting to be empowered. These are people who are taking matters into their own hands and going out and working tirelessly for change, sacrificing a great amount of time and their own personal energy to ensure that we move forward, that underserved communities move forward. And I came back to Baltimore after the 2008 election with a real fire in my heart to give back. And I got to tell you, I probably came to the work very much like anyone would, bleeding heart in hand, a million ideas, and I, quote unquote, got to work. And in that process, I discovered all that I didn't know. I began to learn what I needed to learn in order to serve and be more impactful and to be more impactful on the ground. But most importantly, when I met organizers and community advocates and activists in this city, cops like Russell who care about the city, but their work is in another lane. And I felt like I met my people. I was completely taken with people who were dedicated to bettering, community and the lives of underserved people. I thought that, they inspired me, made me see that, wow, if I hadn't gone into acting or in something a creative field, this is really what I would be doing. I found a passion. And I've always been impressed by those who sacrifice so much time for, in this work. And I just wanted to highlight that work. I believe that we live in a time right now where every single person on the planet has got to devote some amount of time and talent to the evolution of humanity, to ensure that we move forward in an equitable, just fashion towards freedom and equality, for all, and really freedom. And there are, factions and forces right now on this planet that are very, they have a diabolical intention. And I don't know if anybody sees, how that strategy is being executed and unleashed, on the world on many different fronts. But we can no longer just sit back and sort of skate into our future thinking that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay, but, some folks may destroy the planet and humanity in the process. I just think it's important to show to show an example of what that looks like. That I also thought it was important to present a narrative of power. When we are talking so much about injustice and oppression and systematic, institutionalized racism, and these, you can be very overwhelmed by what is by and feel defeated, and victimized, and be overwhelmed by the victimization. And I feel, especially with our young people who are doing this work, that sometimes I see folks getting caught up into this negative feedback loop, and that is the insidious part of oppression and racism. It keeps you tied to it. It keeps you identifying with the disempowerment, and so I thought it was important to show a reflection of people in all walks of life who had the same goal. You might not agree with how they execute or the methodologies they use, but everyone cares about the city. Everyone wants to, save lives in some way, shape, or form, or help, or empower, others. And, there was a common goal. The common goal was also to not burn the city down, So there was commonality there. And just in the sacrifice that's put into that work, I think is just so important. And just to also show that change occurs. It might be minimal, but it does occur. There were some shifts in protocols. Freddie Gray's stepfather, talks about it at the end of the film.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, you're answering all my questions. That's why I'm so quiet. But I would honestly say, I mean, just in terms of like the framework, change is incremental, but we're part of a society where there's got to be a winner and there's got to be a loser, and it's America, So I completely get it. Sometimes people don't necessarily see the change, but as somebody who's been doing the work in Baltimore for almost going on 10 years, and through your art have been impacting lives. I mean, what can you say to this period of time, this 2017 going on 2018? I mean, clearly we're in the midst of some change. Systems are breaking down. People are paying attention to.
Listen, we're always in the midst of some change.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Well, people are attacking not only the racism, sexual harassment, all of these issues that deal with justice and inequality, and just treating people as fellow human beings are starting to become more and more prevalent within the dialogues that I'm a part of. So I mean, how what's the aim when people watch this movie November 20th? We want people to get on board. What words of advice can you give them in terms of like taking the next step, not just watching the movie and moving forward, or just feeling like, okay, that story was told, now I'll flip over to something else. What's the next steps for this?
Yeah, I think that as an individual, I mean, listen, if you want to work, you want to work. You put that intention out there. There's plenty of work out there to do. I think that, but I also think it's very important how to work smartly in this environment. And I think stepping your toe in the water first. Really thinking about the gifts, like the unique talents and gifts you have to offer, and the amount of time you have to devote to that, and really just start doing it. Start offering, your time to research organizations and out there in your community that are doing work that you want to support, and then just make yourself available to them. I would say don't come with an agenda. Just come say, hey, I'm a body. I have these gifts and talents. I'm willing to be a part of something bigger and to collaborate in any way, shape, or form, or just to serve. And just start there. I think sometimes we come into communities with ideas and initiatives, and without having listened to the community or even being familiar with the community, and that's always a bit troublesome. But I think if you just come humbly, with open hands and open arms, and willing, we become an army, and we can move mountains. And at the same time, I'm one individual, I'm one human being, and I have to look at what my capacity is and where my gifts and talents are. And because storytelling is one of them, I've in my past there's a writing background. There's a performing background, of course. I was a visual artist at one time. It's really interesting. I put out an album back in the 90s in London, you know. So it's really interesting because all those, you know, the music, the visual, the writing, you know, and then the performing, like understanding narrative and character and conflict and all of that, and drama, you know, all of that sort of was woven into, you know, into this film, and and then all of a sudden my creativity became, you know, an artistic tool for change. It became a tool for change, right? So that's how I found it, you know. But I got in, you know, and it's the unique and the media advocacy is the unique offering that the organization Rewrite for Change can bring to the table. But it took you know 6 years of being on the ground and working, you know, in communities, you know, and unveiling, you know, various initiatives and efforts to determine that. Right? So you can't expect to go in and serve, and all of a sudden, you know, it's you know, you're going to be a part of something that's you know, that's going to be comfortable and easy, and you're going to sail into some, you know, wonderful, heartfelt, you know, victory. You know what I mean?
Of course.
The work is like life itself. It's challenging, and it's through the challenges that you learn and that you grow, and you're able to then grow your community. Because together, that's what community is we're engaging with one another, and through that engagement, we are uplifted, we are empowered, we are strengthened, and we, I think in general, we no longer live in real live community anymore. We live in some ethereal community that's in some invisible place, right? Mm-hmm. But we need, you know, to be connecting, you know, I think in real time as well.
Yeah. Well, we applaud you. I mean, we go on and on, but the main thing is Saturday, the November 20th, this movie premieres on HBO, which is also the home of The Wire, and you know, we commend it. I think it's a brilliant film. It adds to the library of work that is reframing, as you say, helping to tell our side of the story, you know, beyond what the mainstream sees, and showing how lives are transformed through this activism. You know, so I put this up there with Whose Streets and 13th and even the other movie from Baltimore, Step, you know, as great movies in the last 12 months that are really helping to open eyes. So I really thank you for that, and you know, I know you're going to continue to do more things. Where can people find you, and what's next for you after this?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm nurturing a directing career, but I am, you know, still acting. I have a project. It's going to be out in January called The Shy. I'm acting in that, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to telling more important stories. Not all through documentary. Yeah. To be continued.
Sonja Sohn, thank you so much.
There's something to look forward to. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, we know it's going to come with purpose and intention if your name's on it. So I can't wait for whatever the next thing is. And I thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
And thank you.